One of the reasons I think they haven't been able to make a really successful Fantastic Four movie is that the property itself reeks of the 60s. It was the very first of Marvel's super teams, and it still kind of feels that way. We've got the nuclear family with patriarchal know-it-all father figure, his trophy wife, the rebellious hothead teen, and the goofy grumpy neighbor. But the 60s aren't the only decade to leave their particular stink on comic books. At the very end of the 80s, there was a revolution in the comic book industry being led by talent out of England, and Columbia in the case of Frank Miller. The Dark Knight Returns, Watchmen, Sandman, and Arkham Asylum took what had been a medium for kids and examined it through the lens of gritty realism, pulp noir, and dark impressionism. Now, attempts were made by less gifted creators to tap into this new, grittier take on comics, but instead of exploring what vigilante fantasy says about human psychology, they just covered their characters with a bunch of guns and blades and pockets for some reason. What we got was an aesthetic of edginess that would taint all of superhero comics of that decade with a particular flavor. All of that was to give you some context for today's Heroclix conversion and this character, Marrow. Marrow so embodies that 90s visual edginess that she's in fact the first character to literally be too edgy for her own good. Her mutant ability was sharp bone growths bursting uncontrollably out of her skin. Her entire character concept was taking Wolverine's crappy bone claw de-evolution, multiply it by 4, add yoga pants, and booba. If Marrow seems familiar to you at all, it's because she made it into Marvel vs. Capcom 2 for some reason, and here she is in Heroclix form. Now, Marrow grew up in the sewers as a Morlock and has never worn makeup, so for her Heroclix debut, she got a little nervous and decided to try her hand at some lipstick. Unfortunately, she applied it with a golf ball washer. Now, I have a bunch of these gals from collecting and buying old lots of Heroclix, and I always thought her body had potential for a really cool kit bash. I also tend to buy lots of Goblin and Orc bits, well, particularly Orc bits, but they come with Goblin heads sometimes, and I need to use those up. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to take these Marrow Heroclix, chop off their Annie Lennox looking heads, and replace them with a 40k Goblin head. The goal is to make a nasty little squad of Goblin assassin skirmishers. To begin with, I take the heads off with a hobby knife, and then a quick dip for the Heroclix into some acetone. I'm trying a shallow container in this instance because I want to scrub them with an old toothbrush while they're still in the acetone, and I want to use less acetone than I usually do, although I tend to reuse it over and over. I just have to save it, but in this instance, I just want to try a shallow pour here, doing something a little different. You could certainly just submerge these in a deeper container and let the acetone do its work for you and let it scrub, but I'm trying to do, maybe speed this up. Again, you know, experimentation keeps this hobby fun. These older clicks can really surprise you with their underlying colored plastic, like it's never the same color twice. I shouldn't say that, but you just don't know what you're going to get. With the newer ones, they tend to be this sort of pale off-white color, but with the sort of first run, you could get anything under there, and Marrow is black underneath, so neat. This isn't the cleanest I've ever gotten Heroclix via stripping them with acetone, but it's fine for our purposes today, as this is kind of a Goblin. They can be a little gritty and nasty. It's alright if there's a couple of spots of paint left behind. It's never a perfectly clean when you do this, but the point is to uncover any kind of hidden detail, because these Heroclix are literally globbed, have paint globbed on them at the factory, and you'd be amazed at what kind of sculpts are underneath these. It's much better than you'd think. Once they're stripped, the heads pop off pretty easy with a hobby knife. I'm leaving something for the Goblin head to hang on. The Goblin heads tend to be hollow in the back. They've got kind of a concave area, which is designed to fit on sort of a neck stump, a neck bolt, a little circle on the Goblin miniature that they normally go to. So I'm going to try to leave that behind with the Marrow head and leave more. You can always cut away, but once you cut too much, then, you know, you can't restore things easily. You have to build stuff back up with putty, which is a real time eater, so it's better always to cut a little less and do it a little bit at a time so you don't go over. I have a couple of Goblin heads with cowls, which leans more into the assassin thing, so I do use those up first, although I've only got 2, and so the other 2 are just sort of more typical Goblin heads. Now, because I am using sort of a Games Workshop component here, I like to use a nice circular normal base. I get these, I think it's 10 for a pack of 100 on Amazon. These are just really cheap plastic bases for use with games like Warhammer, and they're indistinguishable from the Warhammer bases. And we're just gluing the clicks down to the base with a little E6000 today. And we're also attaching the heads with that same adhesive, E6000. Once the head and the body are together and it's assembled on the base, I'm going to start laying in some PVA glue just to get it ready for some flocking. Just spread it on there with a bit of an old toothpick. And normally in the project at this point I would dip that into some craft sand, but that doesn't always come across on camera, so I'm just going to sprinkle some on here. Because these are fairly slight minis and they're all getting a very similar paint job, it can be a real time saver just to glue them all together on a platform. I use hot glue because it's pretty easy to tear them away afterwards when I'm done. This way I'm not constantly picking them up and putting them down one miniature at a time, and it really aids in the assembly lining process. On a larger project I might add some rocks or something, but this is such a slight figure and I'm mass producing these, I'm doing 4 at a time. I just didn't feel like adding any cork as rock. Normally I'll break up some cork with some pliers and glue it on here to go along with the craft sand, but today we're just going straight craft sand. It's okay. Again, a piece of cork would probably just obscure too much of this character. Now you can see I primed them in gray and I've got them all glued to our little platform, and now I'm just going to start laying in their base coats. They're assassins, so we're starting with black and working our way up. I'm just laying in some really thin down black gray paint onto their thighs and on their armor. We've got black pants and black hoods, and I'm also blacking out their weapons as we're going to just do a metal dry brushing on those. Now I believe in painting from the inside out. That means like inside the center of the model, also the lowest areas first, and kind of working our way out. In this case that's the thighs, and so we're just dry brushing, not a full-on dry brush, but we're doing a little gray highlight with kind of a drier brush on the thighs. We're going to complete the thighs first before moving on to the next area. And we'll just start putting in our green base coats. I'm not using anything special here. I'm pretty sure this is the Army Painter color that is designed to be orc color. If you've got a line, any kind of miniatures line is going to have sort of a quote-unquote orc green. I don't know what it'll be called in your particular line, but I tend to go with those. I might mix it up a little bit, but, you know, I like to add the sort of green, organic-looking greens and then do a brown wash. That's my favorite starting place for orcs and goblins. I like to drop a brown wash into the face crevices. Obviously, we're going to use this wash to pick out the detail on the stomach, really show those muscles under the chest and stuff. And even though this is technically a female figure, sort of by hunching the goblin heads over, it reads more as pectoral muscles. Please consider going over to my eBay store if you'd like to support the channel. It really helps keep me afloat. I've got pre-packaged miniatures, pre-painted miniatures, miniatures I've painted, as well as graphic novels, CDs, DVDs, all kinds of stuff over there, really. Fantasy books, sci-fi books, you name it, all kinds of nerd stuff. I offer really good deals, and it really helps me out a lot. Of course, if you don't want to buy anything and you'd like to keep us afloat, a super chat is always a great option. Washes can take a while to dry, and so I'm waiting for that to happen. I'm just going to start laying in a base coat on our flock. I'm using my typical formula. I like burnt sienna or cinnamon, and then I dry brush Turner yellow over that. You can see I've only applied 3 paints in a couple of different steps. 3 paints in a wash, and it's already coming along. It's already, you know, maybe tabletop at this point, but we're obviously going to take this a lot further. For highlights on orcs and goblins, tops of the ears, the tops of the forehead, the tops of the nose, you really can't go wrong with a really watered down yellow glaze. For the boots, I think I saved them for last because I wasn't sure what color I wanted to go. I didn't know if I wanted to go black or brown, and I wasn't sure how that would read either way, because if I went black, then you'd have black leggings and black boots, and I didn't want that all to look like one piece of cloth. And if I went brown, you'd have the brown ground on the brown. You'd have the brown boots on the brown earth. And I wanted more contrast on that. I like everything to pop, although that isn't really the best way to paint. You kind of want a few select areas to focus on. And so in this case, I am going to let the brown run into the brown, but I'm going to give them different tints. I think the boots are going to end up a little bit redder. And obviously, once I put that Turner yellow over the earth with the dry brush, it's going to look pretty different. They will stand out from one another. I always think it's a good idea for orcs and goblins, but goblins especially with their long noses and long ears, to put a little color into those noses and ears. And one of the best ways to do that is to just take a very thinned out red. I think I use an ink typically really water down an ink or a wash or something and just get it on there as a glaze. There's some details on the knee pad that I really want to pop, so we're going to throw a dark brown wash into those as well. And now it's time to sort of tighten up and bring out the highlights in the black areas. That's the blades and the hoods. And now to really make the blades in their hands look like blades, I'm just dry brushing some metal on there. In this case, a silver of some sort. And we're doing the same thing for the blades on the back, primarily with downstrokes. In this instance, we don't need like a really brightly polished silver. You don't have to be as thorough with your coverage here. A little bit of that black, can look like evil corrosion. It can read as poison. And now, to contrast those details that we put in with the wash on the boot, we're just going to pick out some highlights on the knee pad. In this case, I think I am using a Turner Yellow. Then I'm going to dry brush that same Turner Yellow over our ground, and we're just going to ring the bases in black. Let's see how they turned out. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss any future content. If you'd like to see pictures of this project or any of the projects we've done in the past, why not come over to our Facebook page? I've got the link in the description below where you can do that. Say hi to the community. Lots of really nice folks over there. Guys, this was a lot of fun to paint up, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.